we kind of went our separate ways for a few weeks. And then I was like, all right, when are we going to start playing again? And I got that uncomfortable smile from Brian. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. A couple of high school friends with similar musical tastes started playing together with no intentions of anything serious. They put out an ad up in the local record store, which was Final Solution in Huntington Beach, California, seeking a singer and bass player. A few days later, they met and played with Freddie, who became the bassist/singer. They liked him instantly and began writing songs, playing parties, and developing a fan base. Once a buzz started developing, they started playing real shows at local clubs. A friend of theirs released the I Can Pee EP on Pinkie Records out of San Diego. His good friend knew someone in Blink, who later became Blink 182, and they landed a show with them. This got them some attention, and they signed a 2-record deal with Liberation Records out of Anaheim, which was started by a 16-year-old named Dave T. The band was featured on the Liberation Records compilation Punk Sucks, which I know a lot of you bought back in the day. Dave set the band up with bigger shows, opening for bigger acts like No Use for a Name, Suicide Machines, Nonsense, 10-Foot Pole, The Queers, The Quincy Punks, etc. And in 1996, they recorded When Pregnasaurs Ruled The Earth, which is the CD that we all know and which we're going to talk about in this interview. And they recorded that at Westbeach Recorders in Hollywood with Donell Cameron, the same studio where Fat Records had used for recording many of its bands in the early years. After the release of their record, they toured the West Coast once and toured to the East Coast and back twice. A second album was never recorded. Luckily, these guys have an Instagram account and a Facebook account, a Facebook page, so I messaged them on their Instagram account, and I also messaged Gary, and I think that, if I can remember correctly, and we do talk about this, if you scroll down in the Donuts and Glory account, I left a message or a comment on one of the posts saying like, hey, check your account. I left you a message. I believe that's who I did this with. I've done that many times with many bands because they don't, if you send a message, they don't really like get a notification. But little fun fact, if you comment, they are going to see that, and most likely they're going to respond. So that's a good way to get someone's attention. Gary and I did a little back and forth for a while for scheduling, and we finally nailed a Saturday down, and I was able to get him on the Skype, and this is what we talked about. New Jersey band Boxcar, playing shows with Blink, recording with Mike Rosas of Inside Out, playing a show in a cave, what were the crowds like, being on Liberation Records, would they do a reunion show, the artwork for When Pregnasaurs Ruled the Earth, and a ton more. Couple things. Gary is a general contractor out in Orange County, California, so you should check him out if you want to have him build some stuff. His domain is gccrocks.com or gccrocks.com. So you should hire him if you need someone to do things like that. 3 ways you can support the podcast. 1, go to patreon.com/thiswasthescene. You can sign up for $1 a month if you choose to, just to help out. 2, donate one time at thiswasthescene.com. You scroll down, there's a purple button that says donate, and you can just PayPal or Venmo, whatever you'd like, one time. 3, you can buy merch at thiswasthescene.com. Christmas is coming up, like I said last week, so you might want to order yourself something or something for someone else. 2 final things. 1, this week I'm going to read a review from Jack McAdams from back in January 2020 when the world was fun. Memories keep the fucking Apple podcast. It just whatever. The title got cut off, but 5 stars. Doyle has a conversational approach that reminds us how communal the scene was/is. His final question of every episode, what scene ethics do you hold on to this day, shows how the scene shaped anyone who was involved. Listen, share, and keep the scene alive. Thank you, Jack McAdams. That was awesome. And if you'd like to have your review read on the podcast, just go leave one. And I do have to check the other places where reviews are left. So I apologize for anyone who has left it there. So hopefully I'll remember that next week. Finally, kind of a serious note, I posted something the other day about how 7 years ago my dad had passed away from colon cancer. And really just did that because every year it pops up and you always remember the day that a parent dies. But there's something very significant with this, besides my parent dying, is that he had colon cancer, he didn't know it, and all he needed was to get a colonoscopy. It's a very simple procedure. I'm 41 years old. I got my first one back in January. It was fine. I literally went in there by 11:30 and I was like standing at my desk by 1:30 in the afternoon. So that just tells you how easy this procedure is. Yes, you get a camera shoved up your ass, but you're passed out with a bunch of drugs. So I highly recommend this for anyone who has colon cancer in their family. And a bunch of people have messaged me saying that their parents had also died of it or had just found out recently that they got it. So this is very serious. And I know that the people listening or the demographic listening to this is pretty much between like 30 to 50. So I would say that you should go get one. I ended up paying for mine out of pocket and it was $1,200 down here in Raleigh and it covered everything. So without health insurance, I was able to do it. So you should go do it. You should get someone else to do it who has colon cancer in their family history. And a couple years ago, I posted about this. A guy in his 60s who's a buddy of mine, he just happened to go get his, and they basically said if he had waited a couple weeks, he would have been dead. So I take this seriously. So you should go do that. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. I'm very excited for this because
I really wish Freddie was in here, but it is what it is.
yeah, I mean, sometimes it's kind of hard to, especially nowadays, to get people together. And I've done a couple interviews where I've had two people on, and it's usually like very late at night. And like I love doing this, but I also don't love like I typically don't even like doing weekends, but because I wanted this to do this interview so bad, I was like, I'm definitely doing this on a weekend, but just not at like 9 o'clock at night. Like,
Right.
I was like, no, I'll probably be drinking by 5, so that really wouldn't work out too well.
I've already cracked one, and it's 5 minutes after 9 here, so figured I get a little looser lipped with a couple beers, which will
But
make it more interesting, I think, because I'm otherwise a pretty introverted hermit. So,
yeah, I've talked to people who typically have been they say that they've been nervous, and a couple people I did some afternoon interviews, and they've cracked open some wine or some bourbon, and it went fine. So, I mean, I'm sure this
cool.
is going to go absolutely fine. But I mean, like, just to kind of, we're going to work up to this. We're going to start kind of go back in time, talk about how you got into music, how you got in the scene, how you got in the band, some tour stories, recording, and things like that, and what that whole time period looked like for you. But I mean, how long has it been since you guys have played together?
I think our last show was in Denver, Colorado. I think the place was called like the Bluebird or the Blue Jay Theater. And I believe it was with a band called the Broadways, and that would have been in the summer
Holy
of
shit.
1997.
Wow, you guys played with them out in Colorado?
Yeah.
Oh man, I interviewed Brendan. It's like episode 31, I think, and we talked about slapstick and the Broadways, and he's been in the Lawrence Arms since then, and they just put out a record. But that was yeah, on that tour, they ended up playing in Jersey for about a week, and we hung out with them, and that's how we met those guys. I love that band. They definitely did not get they definitely didn't have a lot of people like them or that liked them. But do you remember anything about that show?
Um, Not really. I mean, I remember it was like kind of like an all-day festival thing with nobody there, and we sat in our van most of the day. And I remember listening to Eddie Murphy's "Boogie in Your Butt" over and over again, and just laughing our asses off.
I've never heard
But
of
other
that
than
one.
that, I mean, we giant theater, nobody in it. It was just one of those days.
Wow. Yeah, I've talked to kind of bring this up later too, or maybe now, but do you remember the band Boxcar?
Yes.
So I talked to those guys were a Jersey band, and I interviewed Newman and Beanuts and Brendan, and we were talking about you guys in that interview. They were just saying like they went out. That was like their only tour that they went out with, and that was with you guys. And I remember hearing that back then because you guys were kind of like a little bit mythical to me then because there was no real internet, and we'll talk about this where my buddy had got your CD and he was cranking it in his Fairmont. He had this like crazy system. So he introduced me to you guys, and we would just blast you guys all the time. But that was like nothing really out there about you. So it was just, what do these guys look like? Like, where are they from? Like, I just had, and there's really nothing on the internet. So I'm very excited to find out all this stuff, which is just very incidental crap. But it's just like, to me, it's just fascinating that 20 years later, I get to ask you all these questions about that time period. But you do remember the tour with Boxcar, wasn't it only a couple days or like a week or something?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a 3-week tour for us. I think that was the one with Straight Faced.
Okay.
And I think they joined us for a few nights. Again, this is 23 years ago. I smoked an incredible amount of pot at the time. So it's a little cloudy, but I do remember them. And I actually listened to that interview or your podcast.
Oh,
I
cool.
recently drove across a couple states in a really short amount of time, and I listened to a bunch of your podcasts, and that was one of the ones I did listen to.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you took a trip to Vegas or something? Or where'd
New
you go?
Mexico.
New
New
Mexico.
Mexico.
What were you doing then?
I was buying some parts for a truck. So literally drove 12 and a half hours, bought some parts, slept in a hotel, and drove 12 and a half hours back.
Is this for a truck that you build and sell, or just it's just your own truck that you needed to,
It's my own recreational vehicle.
and you got to spend 12 hours a day listening to some old school stories?
Yeah, and then I would listen to like a podcast, someone would say something, and that would send me down a rabbit hole of, okay, I got to listen to that band for a little bit,
That's awesome.
this band. Like I just kind of, that's how I spent the 12 and a half hours, was podcasts mixed with music.
Mixed with insanity of just being on the road.
Yep.
Did any of the stories that happened bring up any memories that you were like, holy shit, I forgot about this?
The whole, some stuff that Boxcar talked about that happened, I think, at that show, and it was somewhere in the northern part of Florida, either Jacksonville or maybe, I don't know. I'm really bad at the geography in that area,
That's
but
fun. That's so fun. Well, I'll kind of go back in time and kind of work up to kind of like when you guys broke up and everything. So it's just the way I structure it, as you heard, just this, it's always the same, and then things will kind of pop up here and there. But let's kind of just go back in time and talk about the origins of just what got you into music in general. Like, what was the song or the music video, or wherever it was that you heard where music just caught your attention?
I was put into drum lessons when I was like 4 years old because I think my mom needed something for me to do to get some energy out. And so I had like a practice pad, some sticks, and I'd go take lessons once a week. And it didn't really stick because we moved around a lot when I was young. And then about fifth or sixth grade, was really into skateboarding at the time. And all the music in the old skate videos was pretty rad. It got me pumped up. And then just like friends' older brothers had all that music, so we would like listen to their records. And it's all the same old shit: Suicidal Tendencies, Circle Jerks, Sex Pistols. But then it got very quickly, I transitioned into the Big Four, much like a lot of other people that played the same type of music that we did.
Was that like Metallica and that?
Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth, Metallica, Testament, Exodus, all of that stuff. But then I went right back. I mean, I kind of always flip-flopped between that stuff and punk rock. And then I discovered like the Descendants and NoFX probably around 88. I would have been in eighth grade. And I was just like this kid that just came home from school and played drums with headphones on. And so that all that stuff is how I learned how to play drums, basically. Just spending hours a day.
So we're like, because it basically sounds like you started off, if you're listening to Suicidal Tendencies and like the Big Four and all that, so metal, you started you started at the age of 4 and then kind of sporadically, but when did you really hone in and start playing consistently all the time?
It was in sixth grade. I got like a pawn shop drum set for Christmas. And it was kind of this thing that my parents like made me go in my room and spend an hour a day. It was like, and it was torturous for me at first. I hated it. It was like, I don't know what I'm doing. This isn't any fun. And then started a couple lessons, and just like rudiments on a practice pad at the time were extremely boring.
Yeah.
But then once it clicked, and they couldn't get me to stop playing. And I think I drove them nuts with my drumming.
What was it that made it click? Just like you finally found just the rhythm, not the rhythm. I mean, like when you're playing drums, there's a lot of shit going on. Like you got to get your wrists into it, and you got to learn how to hold the sticks properly, and then also you got to do 3 things at one time. So like the one day that just clicked, and you're like, oh fuck yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, it would have been an up-tempoed thrash metal song, most likely, where it just had that beat that you could lock into. and I really never let go. I just loved playing fast.
Do you remember the song that finally did it for you, where you just locked in on it?
I couldn't put my finger on any one song, but definitely the metal albums that came out between like 87 and 89. So anything from like Metallica's Garage Days Revisited to South of Heaven, then And Justice for All. And then like No Effects was discovered right after that for me. And I was like, oh, this is the same tempo, but
Yeah.
it's more fun to listen to because it's not so like dark and scary, and they're making jokes and there's melody, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense because your drumming is fucking sick on the full length you guys put out. So I'm just kind of just putting all the pieces together for myself of how you got there, and getting into metal first. That does get you warmed up to be playing like all these Fat Records bands because it's got like the double kick. And were you a single kick pedal or did you have the double bass?
I started out as a double, but then I went to a single pedal. So that album was recorded with a single pedal,
Damn.
and I mean, some of the songs were pushing it. And like, do you listen to stuff today? And everyone still does that same old Eric Sandin beat,
Yeah.
but it's like so punctual because they can clean it up in Pro Tools. We recorded that onto 2-inch tape, and I think I did that whole album in like one afternoon. We spent a few hours setting up the sounds, and then I just went for it. I probably recorded from like 5 p.m. till midnight, and then the next morning we came in and we listened to it, and we punched in a couple spots, which I can tell you like exactly when and where those are because they just stand out to me. But it's funny going back at the time.
Yeah.
It was super fun to record all that stuff. Well, go ahead.
No, like okay, so just you don't have to do all the songs, but like what we're gonna kind of jump around here, but I like this. What song like top of mind can you say if you go listen to this at this part, this is we had to punch me in here or something like that?
Shit. I think it's either the end of it's one of the really short songs that was like super fast. So it's either I think it's Rapid Transit, and it's like the last 9 seconds of the song. And in that 9 seconds, like so much happens. Because when I'm trying to play along to these songs today, just for fun,
Yeah.
in my little drum room, like man, that how much just went down in that 9 seconds, like musically, not just drum wise, but just like the whole thing. Like we were packing those songs full of, especially the shorter ones. It blows my mind. I can barely play those songs today. I'm way too old, way too beat up, got too many injuries. Like I just struggle, and the timing's all over the place because I didn't play to a click. I rushed stuff, slowed stuff down, and it kind of helped some of the songs dynamically, but at other times it kind of butchered them.
I think that's what I liked about you guys is that it was like fucking chaotic, but then there was a melody and there was a catchiness to the songs, but it was like his voice is so scratchy, but it was you could I don't know like there was melody to it, and then all of you guys were just it sounded like really good musicians, and then the song I don't know it was like it, but again it was this ball of chaos. It was almost like a dirtier version of propaganda, kind of. I don't know. That's my take on it.
Right. They were absolutely influential on us.
Yeah, I was thinking that today when I listened to it. Like the first song, I was like, wow, I can't believe I never got the propaganda like influence.
Freddie was like turning green and purple while we were finishing up those vocals. He wanted to stop and come back, but we were on a time crunch. We only had so much time in that studio, and we're like, let's just finish it. Let's just finish it. And he was literally like turning green. He was singing so hard, and he just threw out his voice. That's why it got scratchier than normal. We put a lot of time into guitars, like on that album, like just setting up the sounds, recording the left and right tracks, and then just like kind of the stuff that's sprinkled in there. I think we burned definitely the most time on guitars, and then Freddie got rushed into the vocals, and I rushed the drums a little bit.
And Freddie was playing bass, right?
Yes.
So let's kind of go back a little bit, and I want to go back up to the album, but like how kind of between you getting into the band and the scene, which came first?
Uh, I had been playing in multiple variations of bands. Like I was the drummer, and in my town there weren't a lot of drummers, so a lot of people would want to come. I played with a lot of different people, and it was a couple different iterations of me and Brian, who played guitar in Donuts and Glory, and our buddy Dan, who was an original member of Donuts and Glory, on a second guitar. And we had a different singer. We never had a bass player yet. It was just kind of the three of us or the four of us. And then one person went away. I went out of town and came back. We brought in another guy. And it eventually ended up as just myself, Brian, and Dan. And we needed someone to sing and play bass, or two people. And we did just one of the old flyers with a little tear-off phone number on the bottom at the local record store. And it was like a day later, Freddie calls. And we tried him out, and we loved him immediately. Like, we just knew, because he had been in a band called, I think, Duct Tape Oven Mitt.
Okay.
Just a little local band out of Tustin. So he had a couple songs, and we played with those. But we started writing our own songs, like, immediately. And it was just like this. At first, Freddie didn't really want to sing, so we tried out a singer, and he wasn't really right for us. We knew we wanted a more aggressive sound than like a glossier type sound. And so we talked Freddie into staying on as a bass player and a singer with the four of us at the time.
Did he actually have a voice, or did he just figure it out like in that moment?
I always liked his voice for what we were playing.
Yeah. It like totally fit. But like, did he grow
Right.
up playing? Was he in high school like choir or anything like that, or was he just like?
I don't think so. He was a wrestler,
Okay.
and he was a couple years older than us, so he could buy beer. He was the first one in the band to be 21. And he was a student at UCI, so he had his stuff together compared to the rest of us. I mean, Dan and Brian were still in high school, and I was basically delivering pizzas and snowboarding as much as I could.
Did you guys so then you formed the band, and then that brought you into the whole punk scene? Even though you were listening to No Effects and all that earlier, so you had an introduction to punk music. But like, were you going to
Yeah, we
shows
were.
like on your own?
Yes, for sure.
And this is California, right?
Yeah. So I went to shows in Riverside, Orange County, LA. At the time, we had Showcase Theater, which is kind of legendary. Before that, even, there was this little, I think it was like an Italian food place during the day or something, called Spanky's out in San Bernardino, Riverside area. And you'd get those shows where you had like a straight edge band, Guttermouth, like just these wild anything goes shows
Yeah.
in a really small room that was really fun.
What years was this?
That's the mid, like 94, 95, 96,
Oh,
right up
wow.
to when we formed.
So you were basically you're in small venues seeing, this is like right around the time too all the fat bands were starting to blow up, like,
Yeah.
and just fill that roster, because you said Guttermouth and like Lagwagon's around, No Use for a Name. Did you ever get to see any of those bands in a small club?
Definitely saw Guttermouth in a small club. I saw Lagwagon
Oh
in
wow.
a place that probably held 1,000 people. Good Riddance opened for them that night. And I was really stoked to see that show at the time. That would
Yeah.
have been like 90, 94, 95.
Wow. So when you're going to these shows, and you guys formed the band, was there kind of a let's just do this for fun, or was it we want to do this as a real, like a full-time thing?
We never had any serious discussions like that. Like today's bands seem to just like create a business, and even going, like, I listened to some of the Less Than Jake interviews, and they had such a business plan and such a marketing machine. We were attempting to do that on a really small scale, giving out cassettes, stickers. I was always the one kind of in a rush to get it going, because we still had guys in high school. Freddie was really busy managing a local coffee shop and just doing his thing. So it wasn't a priority for him, but I definitely knew from when I was like a preteen that I wanted to be a drummer. I wanted to be a professional musician and make a living at playing music. So I was the driving force behind trying to get us shows, at least until we got some label interest, and then they started helping us out. But
So what would you do though? Would you just find shows and then just contact the promoter, or did you Or yeah, like so if you see a flyer, you contact and see if you can get on that show, or you're like, hey, I see you're doing shows. Can you get us on some future shows? And here's a demo and things like that.
There was a lot of that, just calling clubs. Even some of the back in that time, there was still the pay to play places where you'd sell tickets.
Yeah.
Like you guys had some of that going on in New Jersey,
Yeah, it was fucking worst.
where you it was. Our first show with Blink was one of those shows before
Whoa,
they became Blink
what?
182.
Wait, talk
Yeah.
about this. This is wow. Go on with that one.
We had an in with them because the the guy, his name is Pat, put out our 7-inch. His sister was like dating one of the guys in Blink 182, if I remember correctly at the time, and he got us a show with them, and they liked us, so we played a couple shows with them. But I think I eventually burned that bridge. I think I made two of the guys upset, and then it wasn't much longer after that we dissolved, anyways. So,
Wait,
but
can I
that show.
wait, can I ask
Go
why?
ahead.
Wait, can I ask why how you burned the bridge or
Yeah, I mean, you can ask. And we played a show out in, I think it was in like Havasu somewhere. It was somewhere on the California-Arizona border. And at the time, zines were really popular, and our friend started a zine, and I drew a picture that represented two bands' mascots involved in an act that I could get canceled if I were to really describe it accurately.
yeah, yeah,
But
I
at the
got you.
time, it was just kind of a joke. Like, I think these two bands are kind of a joke. And I represented that on paper, and it got put on the cover of the zine, and they were really upset because they basically like came like they were walking around like shaking this zine, like what the hell is this? And I was just like, oh god, what did I do? Like,
Oh, like they
little
literally
did I know.
you saw them, they confronted you to your face and they were like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, but they didn't. I mean, they didn't really have too much to say, and who cares, anyways?
Yeah. Well, you're also a very big guy, so I think I would have been like, I'm not really gonna fuck with this guy.
Not at the time. I was 6'2", but I was like 165 pounds back then. I'm definitely much larger now,
hmm
but back then I was just a noodle and I was very weak.
Is that the black and white photo that's on your Instagram where you were like, "Is a photo of a band I was in"? Wait, photo shoot from a band I was in, or was that a different band? There's like a black and white photo on your account.
Yeah, it looks like a newspaper clipping. Is that the one?
It's like you're wearing like a black
No, no, I know
collar
what you're
shirt.
talking about. I know which one you're talking about. That was years later, and that was a band called the Killingtons. It was an indie rock band that I joined for a couple years.
Okay, because I saw that and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's Stones and Glory. But then I was doing the math. I'm like, no, this is like 2002, so you were definitely not in
Yeah.
that band. Okay, so let's kind of you guys get together. Do you remember? Now, your first show wasn't that Blank show. You guys have been playing for a while before you, or like at least a couple shows before you got on that show, right?
We didn't get hooked up with, like, we didn't play our first show with Blink until we kind of already signed with Liberation Records.
That's it. All right, so let's go back to you. You guys do a demo, and then what was it? Because I'm on what is this, Discogs? No, skatepunkersfandom.com, and it says you guys had a promo demo in '95, and then 199X. Oh wait, no, that's the that's the year they put an X. I read that wrong. But you put the I can pee. Was that the 7-inch? Yeah, that you put out.
Yes.
So talk about the demo tape. Like, where'd you guys record that, and how many songs were on it?
We actually did two. The very first one had 4 songs. We recorded that in my bedroom at my parents' house. We had Mike Rosas was a friend of Freddie's, and he was in a band called Smile at the time. He had also previously played in Inside Out, which is a really
Holy shit!
awesome hardcore band.
Yeah, Jack
Yeah,
De La Rocha's band.
he's,
Yeah.
he's a rad dude. So I was like stoked to have him recording us. I think he left his backpack on the entire time he was in my house, which is just what those kids did back then. Um,
Okay.
we set up literally in my bedroom, microphones, ran some cables into the room next door, and he set up a board in there. It was like and we just did it ourselves. I think there's a few electronic versions of that out there, but the songs are super silly, and I think two or three of them are actually leftovers from Freddie's previous band. Then about a few months later, I mean, everything with Donuts and Glory happened so fast, like in such a short amount of time. It's hard to differentiate. Was that 95, 6, or 7? Like, it all happened so fast, and it's so long ago. But we did a second demo at an actual recording studio. Well, we started it ourselves and then took it somewhere to finish it. And that one actually had some cool songs on it that are not on the internet. I need to get those songs electronically from Dan, who still probably has them on tape somewhere. I'd like to get those available for the people to hear, that because it kind of predates everything else.
Yeah, do like a
We're
fucking
to find our sound.
do like a Bandcamp page and just throw that shit up there.
And then we recorded a practice, and I recently found someone that actually has one of these. We recorded a practice session with one microphone in the band room, like wrapped up in a towel so it wasn't overly distorted. And I loved it because I felt like it really captured. It was the first recording that didn't sound like overproduced or something for us. It sounded thrashy the way we did live. And we made like 30 copies of those, made like each cover was unique. We like had like 4 or 5 friends sit around. We chopped up some old educational books. They made cassette jackets for each one of those tapes. And we gave them all out at this show we played in a cave in Las Vegas. And recently somebody contacted me that they may have one. So I'm still trying to get my hands on that, because that was like, I loved that recording because it was so raw.
That's awesome.
So those are the 3 demos.
And were you guys, so at that time when you started putting them out, you were just playing local in California. You weren't branching out and, well, I mean, well, you were in Vegas, so you did actually get on the road and drive pretty far to play a show.
That was the first time I think we played Vegas like 2 or 3 times, because we had a connection with a club there, and then we got invited by a band called Boba Fett Youth to come play in this, literally a cave in the desert.
Wow. How the hell did you guys have sound? Was it a generator?
They had a generator there was like an abandoned Volkswagen microbus in the cave, so they would put the generator in there to kind of isolate it and then run power cords out to the PA. It was basically just like a vocal mic, and then everyone just cranked up as loud as they could go.
That's fucking
we got
sick.
really, really drunk. Like my hands were bleeding after that show from just lack of being able to hold on to the drumsticks. It was a wild night.
What was your guys' stage presence like?
Freddie was he jumped around a lot, was really animated. Brian was a little more subdued, but he would synchronize some jumps with Freddie, but he didn't bounce around a lot. He was busy. He had his hands full playing those guitar parts. And then I was always trying to show off, like just swinging from the rafters, hitting the drums really hard. I feel like I was fun to watch play drums. I was definitely a better live drummer than I am a recorded drummer, and that's still true today. Like I hate playing to a click track, and I'm not a soft, gentle player the way some people are. Some of the guys today, like musicians today, blow my mind. And watching some of the really technical drummers, it's like watching old jazz drummers, just a finesse and how graceful they are, but they're boring to watch. If that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. There was probably a handful of drummers back then that I would watch, because usually drummers are in the back and you get dismissed, but some of them had a real presence. Like in Jersey, did you ever hear of a band Bigwig?
Yes.
So Matt was their drummer, Matt Gray. He was like, he would jump and land to hit his cymbals to end the song. Like, he's the only drummer I've ever seen jump in the middle of a fucking set. And he would wear like a Superman or a Spider-Man costume when he played. So like, he had crazy presence. And then I know I said a handful, but I'm kind of like blanking on him. But there was one guy in this ska band. They played in Skaters World in Wayne, New Jersey one time, and the entire band went off, and this guy was just fire. And I loved that. I always loved seeing a drummer just go fucking apeshit, because it was so crazy to me. So that's badass. Yeah. That was like your thing. Are you still playing drums now? Like, do you still play with bands now?
I've had some long hiatuses. I've not played in a band since I think 2006.
Oh
But
wow.
I recently built myself. I have a shop for my business, and I built a room in my warehouse. And I got 3 years ago. I bought a brand new drum set, everything. I mean, I still have my Donuts and Glory drum set, but I wanted fresh. Um, and I got all set up, and then I broke my left elbow again. I've broken it multiple times on mountain bikes and dirt bikes. And that was kind of a setback 3 years ago, and I'm just now getting around to the point where I actually have time and want to go back out there. But then I just had touch-up surgery on my elbow, so I'm recovering from that right now. But I can play. I just suck. I realize now more than ever, like I was a one-trick pony drummer. I was a fast drummer. I was not like there's a fill that I do 3 or 4 times on that album. And I didn't at the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it, but now I listen to it, I'm like, here it comes again. Like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, very limited language on the drum set, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. Yeah, I mean, I played bass and I was in a band, and I listened to the first album we did. I was just learning how to play bass, and I'm like, yeah, that's the same bass. I just do the same line, or I just hear it over and over again, and I'm like, I'm just really not good at bass, but that's fine. But I never cared to sit down and really spend out. Just this interview I just did that's gonna come out a week before yours was this guy James from this band Slow Gherkin, and this ska band was on Asia Man, and we're just we're talking about how people would always say they'd sit down and just spend days or hours and hours and hours in their bedrooms. I was like, I never had that want. But I mean, technically you did though, because you said once it clicked and playing drums, like you just couldn't stop playing.
It was what I was building up was like speed and endurance, not technical ability.
That was kind of thing back then though. But that was kind of like what people were looking for in the mid '90s, was the drummer who could just do that Fat Records beat, and if you could
Right.
sustain that for 30 to 40 minutes on stage without dying, that was like, okay, that's all we really need from you. We don't need you to go crazy and do all this technical shit. But then like the early 2000s came, and that's where drummers became more focused on dynamics and things, because the songs branched out of that Fat Records style.
Absolutely.
But when you were playing, I just want to just think about this. But from 2002, when you were in the Killingtons, and then you said your last time you played was 2006. Did you always keep a stage presence when you played?
No, I mean, I kind of dumbed it down and became just more of like a backbeat drummer.
Yeah.
The stuff I did with the Killingtons was their music. I only got to help write like 4 or 5 songs, and we did an EP while I was in the band, but it was basically a cover band to me. I was playing someone else's music. And then the band I did after that was basically just a local band with a friend that had pre-recorded everything or made the parts on a computer. So I put my headphones on, and I literally played with headphones on stage, just played his songs as written. So there was not a lot of room for stage presence there.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like maybe why you stopped playing in 2006. Didn't sound like it was very exciting for you.
That's an interesting point.
So let's jump back into you guys starting to play a show. You have your demo tape. You're starting to branch out a little bit, and then what led to the 7 inch?
We played at the gentleman's house, Pat, who put out the 7 inch. We played like on his patio down on the boardwalk in San Diego. I think we made it through like 1.5 songs before the cops shut it down, but we created this connection with him, and he wanted to start a record label. And he just paid, like, we went and did one of those. Back then you could go to a small like recording studio that had 24 tracks and 2 inch reel to reel, and for like $400 you could record for 4 or 6 hours, and they'd mix it down and you were done, in and out in one day. And we did that, and we sold those, and that helped. It was kind of a promotional tool, and it got us something out there to sell on our first tour, because our first tour we didn't even have the full length out yet.
So talk about that. It sounds like you were you the one who booked that tour?
No, I think honestly I have no idea who booked our first West Coast tour that we played to 4 or 5 people a night on.
That sounds about right.
We literally played, like, there's a photo on the internet of us playing in some dude's living room in Santa Cruz. Like,
Yeah, I think that's the only like known image out there that I've seen. It's yeah, it's a living room. Wow, I didn't even think about that, or I didn't even notice that.
I can see the kitchen in the background, I think.
Yeah, yeah, you can. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like anytime, is that did you guys have a photo of you guys in your CD or no?
Yeah, one of each of us. They weren't. It wasn't a group shot.
That was yeah, because I remember your guitar player Brian. He's the tall guy with the dreads, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he was reminding me of like Tom Bigwig. It was kind of like that was definitely the '90s thing where people were rocking the dreads back then because of Fat Mike and No Effects, and people started doing that.
I think we actually played a show with Bigwig at one point.
Really?
Like,
Oh shit.
yeah, I think we played with them. I remember spending like almost all day sitting on a loading dock of a venue. It was like Dallas or Austin, somewhere like that, in kind of an industrial area. And again, like big venue, not a lot of people there, but I really want to say it was Bigwig, and that was the one and only time. I think they were brand new at the time that we played with them.
Yeah, they were doing a lot of touring back then. They started that they were like the band from Jersey where us as local like the local bands were like, wait, there's bands from here that are touring? Like we can do this shit. I think they kind of opened that door for us. We're like, what the fuck? Because all the bands were coming through Jersey and they were coming from out of state. But then when we saw local bands leaving, we're like, holy shit, this is fucking crazy. Which is so cool that it just knowing that you guys tour with a Boxcar still, that just blows my mind. Because fucking we used to play with those guys all the time and we're like really tight with them. And just like hearing that story, they went out with you guys. I was like, wow, that's fucking crazy. And they were just like, yeah, we're just blown away every time these guys got up on stage. So it sounded like when people saw you guys play, they were just kind of in awe, like, you know, because they were just like, they're like, you guys would get up there and just like shred, and they're like, okay, well now we gotta fucking play.
And we picked up on that, but we didn't really know what to do with it. It was like, it kind of made me paranoid. Like, why is everyone just like standing there staring at us? Like, not that like, I don't even want to sound like I have any sort of ego at all, because I really am a very non-egotistical person in the music world. But it just like, we were sometimes like, do these people hate us? Do they want us just to stop playing? Because they would just like stand there and stare at us. And I guess they were just like, their minds were blown or something. I have no idea. It was really a lot of the shows, and it may have been just how stoned I was all the time and being super paranoid. I just felt like people either hated us or they just wanted us to stop playing. And there would be a couple of guys at the end that would come up to us and be like, dude, that was really cool. Like, but a lot of times we would play with other bands, and I think we were just a couple steps ahead.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, you heard it. Once you start playing, once my buddy Steve played, he started your LP, he's just like, dude, check this fucking band out. And he kicks in. I was like, who the fuck is this? And he's like, they're called Donuts and Glory. I was like, first of all, that name is awesome. I was like, this band fucking shreds. We would just crank this CD all the time. And which was funny because, like I said, when that one interview I was talking about him, he had this Fairmont where he had this killer system in it, and he'd be driving down the street, and you would just feel the vibration from a mile away because he played shit so loud. And then when I got in the car with him, he'd be playing like this kid was just like a metal kid, and he walked into Flipside Records, which was this record store in Jersey. This guy Alan Rappaport was kind of like almost like this like mentor to so many punk kids because he was really into the scene and he would stock this record store with all these local bands. That's how we got into Jimmy Eat World like back in the day, and like Sicko and you know like Jawbreak and all that. And Steve came in and he's like okay, I need to learn, I need punk music. And then Alan just goes, well, try this CD, and it was your guys' CD. But yeah, you guys were very like that whole CD just shred. So I can imagine you guys playing live, and if you're pulling that sound off live, people are probably just sitting there, just like, "What the fuck?"
I think other people that had that metal background, especially liked our music, because there's definitely some metal influenced riffs on there.
So when you guys were in LA or back in California, did you start to see a fan base start to grow?
Definitely, especially in the last few months. I mean, in the 3 year lifespan of the band, because I think that's about really all it was in reality, if that, 2.5 to 3 years. Definitely, we noticed a growing fan base at our local shows.
Like, what were they like? Were they singing along, or were just a shit ton of kids just staring at you guys?
A little bit of both.
Yeah. Like, what was one of your best shows where the crowd was singing along and there was just so much energy?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I was so far in my own world when I was playing those songs, just trying to keep wind in me and keep the set moving. I didn't really look at the crowd a lot. I just kind of focused on the drums in front of me. I mean, one of the biggest shows we played that I felt like we had the most people watching us, and there was a lot of people up that may have been singing along, would have been this show we played at the barn at UC Riverside with, I think, Suicide Machines played after us, and then 10 Foot Pole, and then No Use for a Name headlined it.
Holy
And that
shit.
was awesome.
Jesus.
I know, like original 10 Foot Pole lineup. Like,
Wow. That's fucking crazy. Like, did you understand in that time when you were at that show and watching this how, like, did you realize like how big that was? I don't know, for me it's big. Like that's
I did, because I was a huge fan of 10 Foot Pole and No Use for a Name. So I just basically stood on the side of the stage and watched the other drummers play their sets, and like, just, I'm a very technically oriented person, so I'm like, why does that floor tom sound so good? Look at all that shit he's got on the head of it, like, because floor tom's always the hardest drum to tune, but these guys would like use some recording studio tricks live to make it sound like really good. And I really regret not having paid more attention to Tony Sly that night, because that was the one and only time I saw him play, and
wow.
for obvious reasons, I'll never get to see him. As much as I love that band, I'll never get to see them play again
Yeah.
or else.
Was that when they were touring on Leche Con Carne? Leche Con Carne?
Yes,
Wow.
and that is absolute fire.
That's crazy. This is just such a random question, but do you know if they like closed with Exit or opened with Exit? I don't know how you'd remember this, but I just figured I'd ask.
I would not remember that.
Yeah,
No.
I just gotta figure.
Too long
That's
ago.
that's really obscure to try to remember that. I feel like that would have been like their opener or uh, whatever the brown Justified Black Eye would be. But anyway, I feel like you guys. Actually, no, I don't want to say this first. I want to ask this. Did you guys try to get on Fat Records because your sound? I felt like it obviously matched their style.
I think Fat Mike would have just laughed at us as like some kids that were trying to imitate No Effects. But we did. I think I personally sent a demo tape up there. Never got any sort of response, but it would have been like the first demo that sucked anyways. So like, we talked to, I mean, at one point we wanted to get out of our deal with Liberation, because I don't know why. I mean, we expected more from a label just because we were young and really uneducated on how it worked. We talked to Joe Escalante, and he read our contract to see if we could get out of our deal with Liberation, and he's like, you got to do one more album, and then you're on your own. And we, like, at the time weren't interested in doing another album on Liberation Records. There was a stigma involved with it that we didn't really want to be a part of.
Can I ask what that was?
um it was just like, at first it was cool because he had put out that Punk Sucks comp that sold however million or whatever, however many copies he sold of that established him as a record label, but he was still a young kid. And he sent us out on tour under the promise of, we'll send you merchandise in San Antonio. It'll be at your next stop. It'll be at your next stop. And we basically did a whole tour with no merch. And the agreement was, at the time, he was giving us shirts, and we needed to have repressed more CDs and albums to sell. And we were on the road with nothing. And that's our bread and butter on the road. I mean, we weren't getting
Yeah.
paid much to appear.
You guys were on the road with no fucking merch?
Yeah, we did, like, that was the end of us. That was our last tour.
Oh my God. That's like everything.
I think we left. We left with some stuff, but we sold everything. And I think it was like somewhere in Arizona, like Phoenix or El Paso, Texas. Those were like our first two stops. By the time we got to El Paso, we had nothing, not even stickers. Like,
Wow. Jesus Christ. And this is when you guys were touring on when Pregnasaurs Ruled the Earth?
yeah, it had been out a few months at that point, and there was definitely a buzz within like the fanzines, because like you said, there was internet, but it was nothing like it is now. It was like AOL chat rooms and
Yeah.
just garbage.
I kind of say that's like I feel like there's this kind of myth around you guys, and even finding you, I went to your Instagram page and I was surprised that you had one.
None of those pages would exist if it weren't for some really awesome fans like that created the Facebook page. And then once it established itself, they're like, hey, Gary, like this thing's growing. People are asking a lot of questions. Would you like the passwords? And I was like, yeah. And then they kind of just like handed it off to me and Dan to post stuff and reply to questions. And then once the Facebook thing established itself, I'm like, I might as well just like upload some of these photos to Instagram. And I started the Instagram page.
Okay. Yeah, because that's what I read. It was that's how I found you because you said this is run by Gary and you put I think a link to your account. And so I just went down all the breadcrumbs and I was like, I was like, how am I going to get to this goddamn band? And that was it. I went right to your personal page. I was like, I have a feeling people are going to be more open to responding.
A lot of people just write and beg for us to sell merchandise. And just for the record, we have no 12-inch When Pregnasaurs Ruled the Earth LPs available. I myself ordered one from Japan so that I could have one, and I waited like 4 months for it to arrive. We have maybe 10 versions of second pressings of the 7-inch that I don't have any sleeves or liner notes for. And like, because there's only 10 of those and maybe 15 CDs and 12 cassettes left of the original stuff, I shut down the Bandcamp because I feel like I need to hang on to those. But
Yeah.
people constantly are saying, please let me have a cassette. It's more cassettes now than vinyl. Nobody wants the CDs. Everyone wants the cassettes. But I can't let go of them yet because I feel like we need to have some in an archive. I'm not going to make it so I only have one left of each. So I've been unfortunately telling a lot of people no, like I can't, I would love to sell you this, but I can't right now. And the only reason I really started the Bandcamp is because I saw people on Amazon selling things for insane prices. And I was like, that's not right. Like, I would rather sell you a CD for $18 than have some used bookstore or record shop sell it for over 100. It just didn't make sense to me. I didn't want fans paying that much money for something that I could sell them directly that was brand new. So we have this money in like a coffer. I made some shirts, sold some of those. So if the band ever does anything else, we have some money to pay for it based on the merchandise that I've sold.
Have you guys ever thought about doing a reunion show? I mean, obviously now it's kind of impossible at the moment, but like prior to all this?
Yeah, like 5 years ago, I kind of made a big push. I talked to Freddie and he's 100% on board.
Oh wow.
Brian is a little apprehensive. I think like he gets this like whenever anyone asks him a question that he's uncomfortable answering, he just has this like childish grin that he gets on his face. Like I don't know if that's because I'm not trying to badmouth anybody here. I love Brian,
Yeah.
but I think he might be too cool. Like I think he would be embarrassed to get up on stage and play those songs based on who he is now. I'm like, dude, wear a wig, wear a costume, like just get up there and be a goon. Like not that's just the sense. He's never said anything to suggest that. That's just what my instincts tell me. And we even had someone else volunteer to play guitar that I told that story to, and I just don't know if that would work. And plus now now that I've actually sat down and tried to play these songs, it might be an embarrassment to all of us.
Nah, you'd get it back.
Maybe. I've put more time and energy than you would believe into trying to learn some of those songs again. Like it's pretty much my warm up. I'll warm up because the album's 26 minutes long or whatever. So there's like I'll play 8 of those songs and then I'll work through some other stuff and then I'll go back and play them again. But there's just like a couple of parts where it's just like, nope, my arms won't do it. Like the hand speed that I had back then compared to being 45 years old now and having broken both wrists and elbows. My feet are still there, but my hands just can't do it.
Man, that's a bummer.
I'd have to simplify it.
I feel like if you guys were to play a show, I think you'd have a shit ton of people come out to see it. Definitely.
Quite a few people have said that, and even people that promote shows have talked to me about it. That's why 5 or 6 years ago I kind of got excited about the idea of doing it, and I would love for my wife has never even seen me play drums.
Really?
We've been married,
Oh wow.
yeah, we've been together almost 8 years. She saw like a real quick clip that I posted on Instagram, but that's it. Like she's heard music that I've made, but she's never seen me play, and my son's never seen me play. And I would love for my son to see me play drums and my wife, like at some point.
So you're gonna be like episode 114, I think. And so I've done a few of these. And I talked to someone once and they said, man, I gotta give you some credit because he's like, there's definitely a hardcore following with your podcast because I've gotten more messages, genuine messages after my interview with you than a lot of things that I've done interviews for. He goes, so there are people listening to this that are very like authentic and hardcore about this scene. And my point isn't to blow smoke up my ass. My point is that people listening to this, I bet you that they're gonna message you and they're gonna be like, dude, you have to fuck. I mean, obviously there's physical things there and there's no live music anywhere right now. But I have a feeling you're gonna get a few messages where people are like, you should totally fucking do this.
But have you ever like have you gone and seen like a show of a band that you saw in the mid and late 90s play? Have you seen them play live today? Like there's this I was really like I've been disappointed. Like, man, they should just like pack it up. Like this is boring and they have no presence and they're just working through it to pay the bills. Like, and I feel
Yeah,
like
I get what you're saying. I've seen no, I haven't seen a band play live where I thought that. I've heard their new releases where I was just like, yeah, don't write me new music. It's not the same vibe. But I mean, my old band, we played a reunion show in 98, Chris, in 2018, and we played with this other band, Humble Beginnings, and this other band, Jettison, which was LWL. These are all like Jersey bands, and this room, there was 300 kids or kids, my God, we're adults. There's 300 people in this room. I'm so used to saying kids at shows. And the vibe in there was electric, dude. It was so awesome. And it just, everyone had a giant smile on and everyone was just drinking beer and just like singing the lyrics back. And it was crazy. It was nuts. And I think that, I'm not gonna sit here and just keep trying to sell you to play a show, but it's, no, I've seen like Sunny Day when they got back together. I saw Refuse when they got back together. I saw like when all those bands were getting back together, and that shit was awesome. They're probably actually better than they were back in the day. So
I definitely think what you're saying is absolute fact. Like a reunion show is different than a band that's just been working nonstop for 23 years and they're
yeah,
a little, but there's also like, we would all love to see, and I've not done a lot of reading on why, but I can imagine why. But like there are bands out there that we all idolize that just have straight up refused to do reunion shows. And there's a reason. Like you could get up there and I just be boring.
yeah.
I don't know, not meet the expectations. Like, do you think Minor Threat would be able to play with the vigor that they played then today, or Operation Ivy? Like, not that we're on that level at all. We're just this tiny little grain of sand, like in this world of music. But like, I would love to see those bands play, and I don't know if it would meet my expectations.
Yeah, no, it's
But
true.
I've also been proven wrong. I saw the Misfits play last summer, and like it was in a stadium with like crazy light show, and just it was mind blowing the production that it was, and I loved it. Like, so who knows?
I think this is the era where the crowd becomes the energy more so than the band, right? I've seen there's a guy he has a YouTube channel. It's like Hate 68, I think it is. Hate 56? No, Hate 56. And he just records. Let me see. Let's make sure that's right. He documents hardcore shows, like to this day. And then when Gorilla Biscuits got back together, when Lifetime got back together, I mean, they were on stage. Like when Lifetime doesn't have this crazy stage presence. Do you remember Lifetime?
I remember the name. I don't think I ever saw them play or like sat down and listened to their music other than on my recent road trip. You guys talked about them so much in one podcast, I had to go listen to a couple songs.
Uh-huh.
Not exactly my thing, but
Yeah, no, I mean,
respect everybody out there that does it.
yeah, I mean, but they have their stage presence is very like they play and basically the power comes from the crowd. The crowd goes ape shit. So I think sometimes that when bands get back together, they don't have that power that they did, but the audience kind of takes that and runs with it because they're so happy that they're seeing that at the moment. But actually, I'm on your Instagram right now. But yeah, so you're saying the 12 inch, you don't have that anymore, but you guys had like a blue marbled vinyl. Was that put out
That's the one.
back? Yeah. So was that put out back then by Liberation, or was that yeah? Like when did that come out?
That's the one and only album that Liberation released. That it was released on vinyl, cassette, and CD. And that blue marbled, like that was just the original pressing. That was an option at I think they're Erica Records here in Los Angeles that presses vinyl. You can basically if you go to them and you're like I want a custom color that's clear with blue stripes in it, they'll charge you an arm and a leg, but then you can take like the leftovers, the day old donuts, and they'll it's like cheap to have a fancy pressing.
Holy shit.
Yeah, instead of just black, be like, do you have any leftover? You could just do like 500, and they'll. That's how we did that.
Yeah, this is a cool looking. I love that because I just really got into vinyl the last couple of years. I've been just collecting it. I never was a vinyl collector. I had some 7 inches from back in the day, and I love it when I get a record and it's got cool shit like that. Like Bob Nana from Braid, he just put out a record, and it's clear, but there's glitter. It looks like there's glitter in it,
Uh
and
huh.
it's fucking tight. So there's
Yeah.
just something about that experience. Talk about that record. Like talk about how you guys wrote it and how it came together where that got put out in Liberation. And how you doing on time? We're at an hour now. I want to make sure I'm aware of your time.
I don't. I just. I have no schedule today, so I'm good for as long as you want to go. I know you like to keep it under an hour and a half, but you just asked me like a handful of questions as one question.
All right, let's talk about
You know,
how did you
because I get distracted as you can hear. I'll go off on a tangent. Just go give me a direct question regarding to that album.
No, go off a tangent. This is what that's the point of podcast. Tangent away. Talk about how you guys got that how'd you get on Liberation? We'll start there.
He was just an Orange County record label, and we were an Orange County band, and we played with other bands that he had released. He started coming to shows. He liked the music. I think at the time he had that band Homegrown, us, the Supergirls from a small town in Texas, and then he did some reissue. He got into some reissues like right when we dissolved. I think Frenzel Rom, he put them out early on. But yeah, he was just a local kid. We hung out with him. He had an office like right by John Wayne Airport in here in Irvine, and we would talk smack to each other in AOL chat rooms, and then he would come to all our shows. He actually went on one of our tours with us. I'm not sure what he's up to these days. I think he's some sort of like entertainment attorney or something because I've tried to get the original reels from him so we could look at it remastering because the album was never really mastered, and that actually really upset Donell Cameron that engineered and produced, if you will, that record. When we mixed it down to from 2 inch to half-inch tape, Donell like rode his motorcycle with the reels in his side bag of his motorcycle to a little place in Orange County, and he showed up. He's like, "Okay, where's the room at? Where are we mastering?" And the guy's like, "No, we're just gonna rip this onto a CD right now." And he was like up in arms. And we kind of expected to master it too. Like it sounded even better than it did on that cassette, but it basically just went from the half-inch mix down straight onto CD with no mastering. And that's why the volumes are kind of a little wonky.
So I'm on the. So anyone listening, if you have a connection to this guy, you should message him and just be like, you know, Message Gary back. Let's see if anyone out there has any like direct line to him, because I think that a couple things. If that would be cool if they did like a small. I mean, if any label, if you were to get those to have it mastered and put out, even just to have it mastered and put out on Spotify. I don't know, whatever it is that you'd want to do. I mean, we did that with our LP. We didn't put it out. We did our EP on vinyl recently, and we did like a 2000 pressing of that, and then we just took the second album and got it mastered and put it onto Spotify. So just like that is possible. But so tell me about like that when you guys wrote those songs though. Like, had you been? Did you write those songs specifically when you got signed and had to put a record out, or did you have these songs and then you got signed and you're like, okay, great, now we have a place to put these?
I think there's only like 3 songs that are on that album that we didn't have written before we signed the deal. Some of those songs are older, like it's basically 2 years worth of music, like Quesadilla, Fly on the Wall, Chronological, John, Bitches Ain't Hoes. Like those songs were like on one of the previous demos and the 7-inch. So we just re-recorded those and put them on there. And then there was a couple songs, like the most current songs that Donuts and Glory had at the time was Mysterious Thunder, and that is like my hands down favorite Donuts song. I just love how that song just moves through all the changes. And then like Perspective and Pregnasaurs. There was a couple songs we wrote after that album came out that are on like this recording that's floating around out there from when we played live on a local college radio station, where we, in the back end of the band, we brought Dan back and he played keyboards with us, which was really weird for people to be watching us do our thing. And now we had like this keyboard player up there, like where I would stop playing drums, he'd play this real elementary beat on the drums. We just kind of started really playing with the songs, and we wrote a couple songs for that. But like it seemed like we got hyper focused as a 3-piece. And then a couple of the guys got really involved with like computers, started looking at a different direction. And I think that was ultimately, if there was a couple of factors in why we stopped playing, and the computer is like number 1 in my mind. Me being kind of a burden on the band would be number 2. And number 3 would just be the fact that like, I think certain individuals wanted to go do something else. They were more of like free spirited that wanted to maybe travel and do those kind of things. Didn't want to be locked into this thing, even though it was starting to kind of take off.
Yeah.
There was never a discussion about the end of Donuts and Glory amongst us. It just like, we came home from a tour, we kind of went our separate ways for a few weeks, and then I was like, all right, when are we going to start playing again? And I got that uncomfortable smile from Brian. And I'm like, uh-oh, something's going on here. And there was never, like, we never talked. Like, I think we're done. We're moving on. I'm going to go do this. Band just literally dissolved. Like, that's why I've used that word a couple times. There was no hiatus. There was no disbanding, breakup, just turned to vapor.
Wow. That just makes so much sense, because that's like the whole thing about you guys is what I was saying before about finding you on Facebook and Instagram. I felt that it was so hard to find any information about you guys, because even back then I get this CD and then it was, where's this band? They're like, oh, they're not a band anymore. I was like, what the fuck? Like, really? Like this CD is fire and these guys are now gone. And it just got a weird how you guys just like kind of just like casually started. I mean, it probably was a bit more non-casual, but then it just kind of just dissolved, like you said, where it's just kind of like, here we are, and goodbye. No goodbye. It's just where the fuck they go. Did that like suck for a while when the band just stopped?
I think more so for some than others, and I would put myself at the top of the list of like, I lived for that band. That was like what got me out of bed in the morning, was like, all right, we got practice today, or we got a show tonight. We're playing with no use for a name next week. Like, it's all I wanted was to play in that band. And I was pretty lost for a while when I realized that it was no more. Like, I didn't know what to do. And all the bands I've played in since, my heart's never really been 100% in the way it was with Donuts and Glory, because I feel like Donuts and Glory was like my band. I helped put it together, helped push it along, get the tempos up to where I wanted them, cut these silly intros that the songs had, and just got down to brass tacks and banged out minute and 30 long songs that just kicked ass. And without Brian and Freddie, that never would have been possible. I never would have done that without them. I mean, Freddie is like lyrically very potent. Brian was just incredible on guitar and still is.
Yeah.
Dan contributed to help with all the things that he did to get the band moving along. Like,
Yeah, it's almost like when I'm thinking about you guys, and I asked before about if you try to get on Fat Records, there's I don't know, there's always these bands where they kind of fit in the sound of something that's going on that's big, like the party's there, and then the one band is equal to like it kind of represents that sound, or it's similar to that sound, but at the same time it just doesn't fit that sound, but does really well on its own. And I feel like you guys were kind of like that thing where Fat was its own thing, like the No Use for Names, Lagwagons, all of them meshed and made sense. But like you guys would never have been able to fit into that label, but it were still been like respected to not be on that label, if that makes any sense.
absolutely. I mean, I've had a hard time putting my finger on what label would have suited us best, and maybe it is Liberation. I mean, maybe we were that one of those Orange County bands. But when I said we talked to Joe Escalante, I was like, maybe Kung Fu is a good fit for us. Like,
Yeah,
who knows?
yeah. Kung Fu was like Kung Kung Fu had, I forget what bands. I mean, I'm probably can just I mean, I can go on fucking internet right now. It's in front of me and see. But yeah, they had kind of like they were respected, but I feel like the bands that were on there didn't really get to the point like into a. It's almost like they had like a ceiling of where how far they got on that label. I don't know. I mean, the Vandals obviously are huge, but I don't know, man. I don't know what label you guys really would have fit on. I get Liberation kind of makes sense because, and I forgot about that Punk Sucks comp, but I looked it up on Spotify, and as soon as I saw the cover with the little kid with the glasses on and like the desert or something, I was like, oh my God, I totally remember this comp.
Yep.
Yeah, I could see why that he made so much money. It starts off with Pennywise, then No Use for Name, 10 Foot Pole, Sublime, Jesus Christ. Yeah, no wonder he had to put some money. Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like you guys just really were just kind of like just your, I don't know, just like really your own thing from that record.
If we could have gone along a little further, we probably would have realized that we could just do it on our own, like a lot of bands did.
Yeah, I think that's like what I'm thinking. I mean, obviously you have to have some kind of label to get distribution and all that, but yeah, I can't even think of like what really you guys would have fit on then. So when the record came out though, how do you remember how many? This is also very obscure, but do you remember how many pressings you guys had of the CD and how well it did?
I want to say that he pressed 2,500 CDs and cassettes and maybe 1,000 LPs, and there was second pressings of everything. I don't think we ever recouped our advance to record, but I never really asked Dave specifically that when I was talking to him about 5 years ago about getting those masters from him. If we owed him any money, I'd just be like, here, like, but it got like to the point where he wanted us to purchase the global rights to everything from him. And I was like, dude, like, really? It's an obscure band from the 90s. Like, what do you want to make? What do you need to make? I'll reimburse you if we owe you anything still. But at this point, I can't see that we do. I think he had to have sold enough records to make all of his money back.
Yeah.
And it was basically his attitude that really turned me off, where it was just like a business transaction. And I'm like, again, this is a band from 20 something years ago. We just want to hear, like, if you want to make a deal with us and you honestly have those 1/2 inch reels in your closet somewhere, like, can I please inspect them to make sure that they are worth us going into some sort of agreement for me to purchase them from you? Because they could be ruined. They could have gotten wet. They could be brittle as hell right now and need to be reconditioned. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
And I got frustrated just in how much of a business transaction he was treating it like, not like we were like the friends that we were back then. I was just over it. Like,
And that was recently? That was 5 years ago when you guys had this conversation?
that was probably, yeah, about 5 to 6 years ago.
Huh. It would be cool to just be able to. It's just gonna sit somewhere. Like it's really not doing anything. So like,
Right.
put
And
it out.
amongst the band members, we have the technology to get those. Like, I have a half-inch reel-to-reel machine. Dan is like this incredible producer, engineer guy that works from home. Brian has a studio in Costa Mesa where bands record. It's just like we're all still attached to music, and we have the technology to take that and listen to it and make it digital and maybe play with it a little bit and reissue this thing, because people have actually asked if they can reissue it, and I'm like, well, you'd have to talk to Liberation because he owns the rights to everything right now.
I mean, it's on Spotify, and the only way to get on
I put it
Spotify, you put it there.
there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you bought like a server space to upload the album and then get it up there?
I think I went through TuneCore, which
Yeah, but
I'm not.
you have the digital copy though, but just not mastered, right?
I think I just uploaded straight from CDs to
Yeah.
my computer and then uploaded from there.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's got to be hosted somewhere. It's like podcasts. I have Libsyn where I upload these and it shoots it everywhere, all over podcast world. So yeah. How'd you guys come up with the artwork for the record?
Again, Mike Rosas, the guy that did our first demo, he was kind of on the front lines of computers and Photoshop and stuff, and he's a cool guy. Like, we went over to Freddie was friends with him, so we went over to his apartment in Costa Mesa, and he just had like a shitload of vintage Playboy magazines, and we were flipping through them, and we just were like, this caveman. And to this day, I want to know who that artist is, because I would love to buy like a book of those comics, is all they were. They were just in Playboy magazine. We basically just scanned a couple of those images and then tried to create this vintage looking old album cover, pieced it all together in a night or two, and that was it. There was no forethought into, well, let's have a dinosaur and a caveman. I think it just tied into the Pregnasaurs thing, which comes from Married with Children, just like another obscure reference.
Oh my God. Wait, for what, like an episode from that?
Yes, there's a link I posted a link on the Donuts and Glory Facebook page to like the clip of Al Bundy saying what he says about Pregnasaurs.
Okay.
It's a no ma'am thing. Did you watch much of that show
Oh
when
man,
you were young?
oh dude, I loved that show. Yeah, no ma'am. Yep.
Yes.
What was the Psycho Dad? That was the show they would watch. He'd like kill his family or something. Do you remember?
Something like that. Yep.
Psycho Dad, Psycho Dad. Yep.
And at the time, I didn't even realize that the No Pregnasaurs thing was a reference to Married with Children. But there's a lot of like 80s references within that album, like just stuff that we watched as kids, and we just kind of placed pieces here and there within the lyrics.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what were your songs about? Was there any like real direction they went in, or was just super obscure?
Some of them have a lot of meaning, and it really blew my mind when the album was done and the artwork was done, and I was just like sitting in my room listening to it and reading along with the lyrics. I'm like, it really blew my mind what Freddie was capable of. And then some of it was just pure silliness. Like, before Baywatch, I don't think there's any message to be taken from that song other than the summer of 1984 was a really good time for us that were like 9 years old at the time. But there's some really meaningful stuff there. Stuff that still like hits home with me today. It's trying to raise kids, and then songs like that HTTP / My Ass song
Uh-huh.
title. That's about just like, to me, letting pop culture and television raise your kids for you, but then failing your children. So try
Interesting.
to be more hands-on with your kids than let TVs and today tablets and iPads and video games.
How was he writing about that when you guys were like late teens, early 20s?
I've indicated to you a couple times that Freddie was pretty smart, and he still is. So I really think if you want, like, to have, if I'm the black interview, if you want to have the white interview, like, you would approach Freddie and be like, like, just wait for him to make himself available.
Yeah.
And his interview will contrast. It'll be black and white with mine, with what he will tell you and what he says compared to me sitting here in my garage.
Yeah, but I love his interview, so I mean, if he wants to, sure, and I could do like, here's his take on it. But I think this is great. It's cool too. If anyone goes to the Instagram page, you go to the tag section. Like you guys, someone tagged you 216 weeks ago, and it's just this collage of CDs. It's got like 80 Fingers Louie. It's got Whippersnapper. I interviewed Andy. That was a great interview. He's fucking hilarious. And it's like strung out. Actually, Jesus Christ, I think I've interviewed everyone in this stack here. Yeah, 88, Bigwig, Near Miss, Jeremy, Whippersnapper, strung out. Jesus Christ. But you guys are right there in the mix, man.
And that blows my mind. The fact that there's 800 people that like Donuts and Glory on Facebook, and they're all over the world. Like when I was selling CDs and shirts, I would say 80% of them left the country. They went all over the place, and I was just like, how did it get this far?
Yeah, I mean there is like I said, there's a let's say ethos, like a mysterious ethos around you guys too, because that definitely helps because you guys just came and left super fast. Kind of wrap it up, but do you have any like funny tour stories at all or anything like that kind of that you remember?
Not necessarily funny, but on our last tour, I got arrested,
There
which
we
made
go.
us miss a show with Against All Authority, which was like one of the shows we were really looking forward to on that tour.
Oh wow.
So we were we were hightailing it from somewhere up in that panhandle part of Florida where we literally played in a dude's garage. Like they made us hamburgers and stuff. They like barbecued for us while we were there. We did a similar show in Louisiana like that. And we got these awesome red beans and rice. So we're like hightailing it in a short window of time from the panhandle of Florida through Orlando. And I think we were headed for Miami to play with Against All Authority at a place. I'm going to try and find the name of the place because really quickly, on our Instagram, there's a flyer that I posted where we played with Straight Faced and Shindig at Suburbia, or next to Club Z, it says. And where I think we were going back to that same place to play there again with Against All Authority. But we were driving this piece of shit, like old bands used those shuttle vans at the time. And we found like a Dodge wide body that had been a radio communications van. So we gutted it and like we put two couches in it, built a bunk in the bed, and like had a spot for all our gear under the bunk in the back. And there was 6 or 8 of us in there. We always had extra people on the road with us. And we got like the muffler broke, like, so the thing was super loud. And we're like, we just got to get to Miami and we'll fix it. But we got pulled over like right outside of Orlando. And like at the time, it was just like they brought like 5 cop cars, dogs, and they pulled us all down, sat us down. Like, okay, guys, like the dogs indicated there's drugs in the van. And like at the time, I wasn't smart enough to realize that dogs can smell weed from like almost a week away. Like if you had smoked in there a week ago, the dog would still indicate there's pot
Oh,
in there. So I just stuck my hand up. I want to get it over with so we could get back on the road. Like I got weed and some mushrooms in my backpack. So but the blue backpack next to the couch. So they found it. I got arrested, spent a couple hours in Orlando, Orange County Jail. Pat, who put out our 7-inch, was with us. He threw up $500 to get me bailed out, but we didn't get back on the road in time to hit that show. And that's just not really a funny story, but it's one of the examples of how I was kind of a burden to the band more than like I didn't help the band financially at all. So when I say I was a burden, I was like this baggage for the band that was costing the band money all the time. And again, one of the reasons that I feel responsible for its demise. But it was a bummer because Freddie was really mad that we missed that show with Against All Authority, and it was the end of that tour that was the end of the band. So that may have been the first like strike amongst other things that happened on that tour with Straight Faced that ended the band.
Yeah. I mean,
we
that's
got
crazy.
we got beat up playing a show in a backyard down in San Diego. Like we were hanging out at a friend's house with a keg of beer, and like some like frat kids showed up and tried to take the keg of beer, and it just ended up like in this war in this side yard between a house and a fence that's like 3 feet wide, and I fell over and hit my head on a curb, and I was like bleeding everywhere. Like there's a lot more of those kind of stories because we were, for the majority of our short career, like a backyard band. Like the big shows didn't happen until the last 6 or 8 months of our career. So there's a lot of stupid shit like that. And I'm sure Freddie would have more stories. I have like just spotty memories of that time period because of the lifestyle I was living.
It's interesting to me that you're the one holding the torch for this band right now and saying like in the beginning, like, I mean, it sounds like, did you personally, I think I asked this earlier, but like, did you personally, you took it seriously? Like you really wanted this thing to go somewhere, but it sounds like leading up to, like you said, the last 6 months of you guys getting on better shows and starting to blow up a little bit or getting noticed. Prior to that, it sounds like you had a little bit of loose behavior, I guess. It's a very parenting way of saying something, but it sounds like, yeah, I guess that's worded right.
I think you're right. I mean, there's no nice, you can just say I was the fuck up in the band, but I was also the one pushing to move it along all the time.
Why do you think it was like like your actions were contradicting what you wanted it to do, though?
I think, I honestly, I don't know. I mean, I just wanted it to make it happen. And like partying hard was a part of the dynamic of that type of band in that time period. Like
Yeah, yeah,
the bands that were more on the post-punk end of the spectrum didn't really represent that, and they didn't sound like it either. They were much more put together, and a lot of the culture at the time was moving towards that and moving away from the silliness of, even though NoFX hadn't really hit their peak yet, there was like the NoFX kids, and then there was the post-punk kids, and they were definitely, they each had their own little subgenres, but I wanted to live that pre-sobriety Eric Sandin NoFX lifestyle, partying hard, fucking off, but also wanted to make my band a success. So I hope that answers the question.
it totally does. I love that reference to Eric. I've talked many times with the NoFX book that came out. Have you read that?
Yep. Yeah.
Have you listened to the audio version of it?
I've not listened to that yet.
Dude, way better because they all read their parts in the book.
Okay.
And Eric talks about how, I mean, he was doing heroin-ish. I mean, he was off the rails.
Right.
But like the Moron Brothers are about him and the other guy in the band. Like I didn't know that song was about him, but that reference there when you said that, I just went right to just knowing exactly what you fucking meant. That was a great reference. But yeah, if you get a chance, you fucking, I don't care. It's like $16 or whatever it is, but buy the audiobook and listen to it. It's so great when you hear them telling these stories. And there's like more shit in there too, where they kind of like, this isn't like in the book, but they're just talking. Yeah. Well, cool, man. This is great. This is everything I wanted it to be.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Yeah, two things real quick. One, what would you like to plug? And it could be anything. It could be about you guys. It could be about someone you're friends with who's doing something. Whatever you want to plug. Or your own business. So, whatever.
I'm not going to plug my own business. It has nothing to do with music. I'm just a contractor. That's how I earn a living now. If you want to really find out about that, you can just search my name, construction, and then you will find me, my website. Stop driving like dicks on the freeway. That's what I'm going to plug. Just stop being an asshole in general to everybody. It's what's wrong with us right now. There's just too many assholes.
That's very true. Okay.
I don't think anybody that's listening to this is driving around like an idiot and getting overly dramatic in politics on Facebook. And people that are listening to a 90s punk rock podcast are probably good people. So let's spread the word.
Okay. Well, this might kind of go in this last one. I know you've listened to a bunch of these, but last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
Without getting myself in too much trouble, I'll just say that I owe a lot of money to the IRS because I don't want to conform to the way that we're supposed to, if that makes sense. I have a hard time with the structure of our government and supporting it, but I have to earn a living and finance my lifestyle. I'm not into pop culture, so I guess that's my way of conforming to the ethics that I thought I had when I was a 19-year-old drummer in Donuts and Glory.